Hey, what's up? If you don't know me, you're new to the channel, my name is Josh, and today I am repping Justin Jefferson. Let's go. Viking season is upon us. I'm so excited. I need to talk about Jettis. You guys know how good he is, so that's why I'm rocking the jersey. Let's go on to what I'm talking about today is Jesus in the garden. This is in Matthew 26 through 36 through 39. I'm just going to read it to you, this section quick, and then I'm going to talk about what it means to us today. And I think this is one that we all know from Easter. It gets talked about or at least mentioned, right? But it's kind of like just one of those things in the story as we're getting to the cross and the resurrection, which are great, right? So I understand the rush to get to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, but I think we don't do enough sitting in this moment. At least I have not before. And recently, I really read this again and kind of sat in this moment and really what it means. So let me read these just a few verses to you. Jesus came with him to a place called Gethsemane and said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, which is James and John, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." He went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." The first thing I notice here is who he surrounded himself with. He had his disciples, he had his 12, and I've preached whole messages on this before, and maybe I will again sometimes, but he had his 12, but then he had those three, right? Peter, James, and John, that were even closer. And that, who are you surrounding yourself with? I think it's great to have friends, to have people in your life, but you can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. I've been there before. You need people that who can you call in your most difficult hour? Like, who are those people that will be there for you in the most difficult time of your life? You look at this, it says, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death." This Jesus, Son of God, is in such a dire, sorrowful situation. He had people that he was like, "Come with me and pray." And you need those people in your life. I'm not going to belabor that point any longer. I think if you don't have those people, then I think you should search, and I think you should pray about it and be intentional. This is why, again, I've preached on this before. Community is so important, not just having people in your life, but being intentional with the friends that are in your life, right? Do you have people that you can go to, that you would call to pray with you if you're going through such a difficult situation? Jesus had those three, even beyond the 12, who he did life with all the time, but those three he was even closer with. And then ultimately he goes to pray, right? That's important too in your situation. You want people that are going to pray with you, not people who are going to, tear you down or discourage you or get you drunk or doing something stupid to forget the pain, but like people that will address it with you, will help you and pray with you. The second thing I want to point out is that Jesus was human. I think a lot of times we think of Jesus, he is God, so we think of him as God. Or like when we think about like Easter, right? We go through, if we skip over Good Friday, we don't think about the pain that he went through, and we just like, oh yeah, he's raised from the dead. Like, I remember thinking growing up, like even maybe the first few times reading this as a kid, like, why is he so, like, what's the big deal? We know he's coming back. He knew he was coming back. He knew he was going to be resurrected, right? But he was a human. He didn't want to go through this. He didn't want to be beaten and tortured. Jesus had emotions, right? I think it's in Luke that it actually mentions that he sweats drops of blood, right? Like, he's so stressed and anxious about this because he knew he knew exactly what he was facing, right? And he didn't want to do it. And it's so important that we remember that Jesus was human, that he became one of us, that he stepped out of heaven, wrapped himself with flesh, and came down to this earth to experience life as we do. He was a human. He had emotions. It's also means it's not bad for you to have emotions, right? We know Jesus didn't sin. We know he had emotions. We know this is anxiety. We know he didn't want to face something. We know that but that's okay. We go through that too. It's what we do with that, right? When you're feeling anxious, do you have people you can go to, right? Maybe it's friends or family, a pastor, a therapist, somebody that you can go to. But then pray. Take that to prayer, right? That's what we do with the anxiety, with the emotions that we have. Don't just sit there in it. but do something about it. And what Jesus did was he took his three with him. He took all of his disciples, but the three closer, to pray. The third thing is we need to pray in that same passion, but then submit to God's will. And growing up in the church that I grew up with, the church I grew up in, with the people I grew up with, I absolutely love the power of prayer that is so prevalent in the church that I grew up in, and the holding on to the hope, to the promise, to the things that God has for us. And we pray, and it's like, you ever been around like some real intercessors that like pray? I've never seen anybody drop sweat drops of blood, but I've seen some intercessors like pray. And so many of us, I know I've done this before. I just kind of like say a little quick prayer, and then I'm like, well, we'll see what happens, whatever. But I know that's not enough, right? And then when you're in some situations like this, you're going to pray a whole lot harder, and you need to pray a lot harder. But what you also have to do is submit to God's will. And this is a tricky balance, I think, that I have not mastered, and I don't know how many of us have. But that idea of like, I'm going to pray with everything I have, but then I'm going to get up and say, but at the end of the day, God, your will be done, not mine. So if you're praying about a job, right, and you're like, God, I really want this job. I think it's great to pray and pray and pray for that job with everything you have, but then trust and know that God knows what's best, and he might not give it to you. He might have something else in mind, and you got to be okay with that. And I know that's tough to do. And you look at like healing, right? That's one of those that, man, that's really tricky, because I know people who have really stood on the word and prayed and had people with them that prayed and prayed and prayed for healing. And then at the end of the day, it didn't happen. And then what do you do? And I'm not saying it's God's will to have people die, to not get their healing, but you have to be okay with like, what happens is going to happen, and I'm going to continue to live my life, and I'm going to continue to trust God. I'm going to continue to pray regardless of the situation. And I think that's the tricky part, because we as humans, we invest so much time and energy and passion into praying for something. If it doesn't happen like we want it to happen, we have a really hard time with them. I get it. I would hate to work at a job all day long and then feel like I haven't accomplished anything. In fact, no, I'm not going to go into that. But you ever had a day like that at work where you just feel like you're doing a lot, and then at the end of the day, you're like, what did I even do? Like, what did I accomplish? Am I any closer to my goals? Did my company move further along to what it was trying to do to accomplish their goals? Like that's tough. But when you're praying, you just have to know that things are happening, that God is going to do stuff, but ultimately it's not my will, but it's his will be done. So I don't think there's anything wrong with praying for anything and everything that you want, whether it's a job, whether it's healing, whatever it is, but just know and trust God that, hey, it's not my will, it's his will. And Jesus knew what was going to happen. He prayed with everything that he had and then still submitted to God's will. Like, I think it's so important that we do both, that we pray effectively, fervently with everything that we have, but then when it's done, we say, okay, God, but your will, not mine. That's the tough part. It's tough to do that, but that's how we do it. That's how we live this life. That's how we get through this life. That's the example of Jesus that we follow. That's how we pray, like he did in the garden. We pray fervently. We pray aggressively. We pray passionately. But then at the end of the day, you got to be willing to get up and say, you know what? God, this is what I want. But at the end of the day, it's your will, not my will, that I want done in my life.